My daughter slapped me in front of everyone at her wedding and said, "Now you know how it feels to be humiliated?" The sound cracked through the reception hall and 200 guests went silent. My cheek burned where Natalie's hand had connected, and I stood frozen in my champagne-colored mother of the bride dress with my hand halfway to my face. She stood there in her white gown, breathing hard with her bouquet dropped on the floor between us. "Now you know how it feels to be humiliated," she said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Her new husband reached for her arm, but she jerked away from him. "Don't. She needs to hear this. Everyone needs to hear this." I tried to speak, but my voice caught. "Natalie, what are you doing?" She laughed, but it sounded hollow and angry. "What am I doing? I'm finally telling the truth, Mom. I'm finally showing everyone who you really are instead of the perfect mother act you've been selling for 26 years. My husband stood up from our table and tried to approach, but Natalie held up her hand. "Stay there, Dad. This isn't about you. This is about her and what she did to me." The guests shifted in their seats. Some looked away, others pulled out their phones. I felt my face flush hot with shame and confusion because I genuinely had no idea what Natalie was talking about. Natalie turned to address the room full of our family and friends. "My mother has spent my entire life controlling everything I do. Every choice, every friend, every boyfriend, every opportunity. Nothing was ever good enough unless it made her look good. And when I finally tried to live my own life, she sabotaged me." I shook my head trying to process her words. "Sweetheart, I never sabotaged you. I've always supported you." Natalie's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. "You told Stanford I was withdrawing my acceptance. You called them 3 days before the deadline and said I'd decided to stay local for family reasons. I never knew until 2 years later when I ran into my admissions counselor and she mentioned how disappointed they were that I changed my mind." The room buzzed with whispers. My stomach dropped because I remembered that call. I'd made it from my office at work thinking I was protecting Natalie from making a huge mistake. Stanford was across the country, and she'd been dating Marcus for 2 years. I thought keeping her close was the right thing. I thought I was being a good mother. "That's not all," Natalie continued. "When I got the job offer in New York after college, you told them I had health issues that required me to stay near family. You emailed my future boss from a fake account and said I was dealing with chronic illness and couldn't relocate. They rescinded the offer, and I spent 3 years thinking I wasn't good enough for that position." I felt tears burning my eyes. "Natalie, I did that because you would have been alone in a huge city with no support system. You didn't know anyone there." She stepped closer to me, and her voice dropped lower but somehow more intense. "I didn't know anyone because you made sure of it. Every time I made a friend who encouraged me to be independent, you found a way to drive a wedge between us. Remember Jessica from high school? You told her parents I was doing drugs and they forbade her from seeing me. Remember Allison from college? You sent her screenshots of texts you claimed were from me talking badly about her. They were fake, but she believed you because why would a mother lie?" My mind raced back through the years trying to find justification for my actions. I'd done those things, but not maliciously. I was protecting Natalie from bad influences. Jessica had been wild, and Allison was pulling her into party culture. I was being protective, not controlling. Natalie wiped her eyes and looked at her new husband. "When I met David 2 years ago, I almost didn't tell her about him. I knew she'd find something wrong, and she did. She hired a private investigator to dig into his past, found out he'd been arrested for a bar fight when he was 21, and tried to convince me he was violent." David stood next to Natalie now with his arm around her waist. He looked at me with something between pity and disgust. "The charges were dropped because I was defending my sister from a drunk guy who grabbed her. But your mother printed out the arrest record and left it on Natalie's pillow with a note saying I had a criminal history." I remembered doing that. I remembered thinking I was protecting my daughter from a potentially dangerous man. The investigator had confirmed the arrest, and I thought Natalie deserved to know. But hearing David's explanation now made my chest tight with shame. I'd never asked for the full story. I just assumed the worst and acted on it. Natalie's voice broke through my thoughts. "But the worst thing you did, Mom, the thing I can't forgive, is what you did to Sophie." Sophie. I felt the blood drain from my face. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.